Good evening. It is 5:30. I will call to order this regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Thank you for joining us tonight. I will start by inviting you to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda along with the HR addendum that is at our workstation.
Second.
Great. Moved by Seth, seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion approved. Next, we will move on to the recognition of our audience. I will read this. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or to debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 4 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, which is Devin Stachinski.
Devin Stachinski, HMR. From the Great Seal of the United States, E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. And yet, this board has managed to divide us all. But there are two other Latin phrases also from the seal. Annuit coeptis, Providence has favored our undertakings, and Novus Ordo Seclorum, new order of the ages. Providence does not favor your undertakings, and your attempt at a new order has failed. Spectacularly, in the first month of this new board, you have made us a national embarrassment as a district and as a community. To quote Seth Holden, we're going to have to probably be prepared to take more heat than we normally do for decisions we make. Do you understand why that is? Because some of you refuse to reflect on your actions and learn anything. To quote Seth Holden again, in the aftermath after the reinstating of the Pledge of Allegiance. I still stand extremely firm in my reasonings I gave to discontinue the Pledge of Allegiance. After looking at the big picture, I thought it was time to concede the battle to win the war. The only one who claims to be at war here, Seth, is you. And you've proven to be too foolish, arrogant, conceited, and myopic to win it, based on your own words. Your actions have put the district under duress and angered more citizens of this great city than you think. To keep such actions from happening again in the future, because I know they will, given your words and actions, in the best interest of the district, you must resign immediately.
Thank you. Next tonight is Lillian Jones.
Now that I have all of your attention, my name is Lillian Jones, and I live in the Centennial Davies District, South Fargo. Without exception, Fargo Public Schools has endeavored to be as welcoming and inclusive as governing entities deem appropriate. Policies have been crafted to, for example, quash bullying. The district adopted a state-mandated anti-bullying policy a number of years back and has operated with the same in place since that time. The board's recent decisions surrounding the Pledge of Allegiance have been met with violent and overtly racist threats against school board members and members of the district that has resulted in a national embarrassment, and for that, I apologize. I understand that the pledge was not recited at the school board meetings until recently, and why this issue was put back on the table after the new board was seated is perplexing. I'm here today to propose that the board adopt security measures to protect the safety of the school board members themselves. While the institution has crafted policies to ensure the safety of staff and our students, it is now clear that the safety of our school board members, or this governing body right here, is another factor for consideration. Among the issues that had been brought to light in the revealing after the after effect of these recent board meetings regarding this decision or regarding the pledge, the threats to personal safety, to an individual's very life, that's just going too far. And I think that those sorts of threats should probably, maybe someone could pass around some lozenges. That sounds in order as well. But I'm wondering if the board could consider a device to be distributed to members of the board in the event that those members receive threats on to the numbers assigned. Those devices could be handed right over to the authorities, and business could continue as warranted. That makes sense, instead of disclosing the personal contact information of each member and opening them up to attacks from the outside. I appreciate the work that you do, and I look forward to a written response in regard to that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next this evening is Brad Shafer.
You know, it was 2 weeks ago, we were here, 5 people spoke. All 5 told you guys how ludicrous it was to even vote on what you were apparently going to vote on. You chose to vote. You did not listen to the people who put you in power and can take that power back, okay? So you chose not to listen to us, and incredulously, it was a 7-2 vote. 7 of you chose to totally ignore the people, which you've done for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, the COVID stuff, guys, you just were horrendous. I mean, you feel you're smarter than us, and you're not. And your collective IQs, especially when you include Mr. Holden's, is well below most people in this room. And so I would say, listen to the people, okay? You listen to Fox News for all people. Oh, goodness, you guys are mostly progressives, whatever the heck that means. I don't know what you're progressing towards. It sounds like anarchy. But you listen to the national media, and you listen to Burgum, and all of a sudden it's 8-1 vote. I mean, what? Somebody explain that to me. You were told not to do this, clearly, emphatically. And you ignored the people. You felt you knew better. You do not know better, obviously. You shot yourselves in the foot first time 2 weeks ago. You totally embarrassed this community. Totally embarrassed. I had people calling me like, what the heck is going on in Fargo? We thought you guys were conservative. God-fearing red state, and here you are. I mean, you got school starting with all the psychological damage you got with these kids you've caused, and now you're gonna pick on the pledge? Really? I mean, how stupid is that? And you guys aren't gonna answer. You didn't answer last time when you tried to make excuses for why you voted the way you did. You're not gonna answer. So then you went on Thursday, called a special meeting, and you reversed your whole decision. So you shot yourselves in the foot again, your other foot. So you're out of feet, okay? You can't shoot yourself in the foot anymore. So you guys are on life support right now. You cannot function effectively as a board. The people have every right to just clean the slate. Everyone, I mean, you got 15 people up. I don't even know which 9 of you are really members. I got a lot of names out here, so I'm not sure which 9 are members because, and that's my fault, okay? That I am not involved enough in the who the heck you guys are, but we had a right clean house. Do another recall, which they botched last time, whatever reason that was. I wasn't involved in that. But the simplest thing to do is to ask you, Seth, I'll echo this fella's deal. Resign tonight. Let's move on. Bob's your uncle, and we get on with school, okay? Please do that, sir.
Thank you. Next this evening is David Halcrow.
That's all you need, another old guy talking to you, right? You recovered from the flag, so that is one area I have a problem with. I'm a vet. I fought in combat. So the only one here that knows anything about that's Namal. Nobody else has been in combat. To understand combat, you have to understand the death that goes on in that area and the people that die among you and the fright that that causes as a person. We fight for that flag. Every American that has fought and died for this flag stood up for this flag. You never, ever kneel before the flag. If you remember Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics, won 4 gold medals. After that, the American flag was never dipped to another country, and he carried the flag. So don't ever do that again. That's not okay with me. And I'm just a typical vet. I'm 74 years old, I'm a grandpa. I wish you guys well. I hope you do what is right for the students. The students are the only ones that actually matter. You have to provide an education for them without having a private agenda of your own. As long as you do that, and then provide security for these kids. Like this young lady here. You need somebody like that in probably every school with the goofballs that we have nowadays. You can probably hire, if nothing else, you can hire old, like Iraqi vet age group that could still do something. I'd be glad to do it for free, but I'm too old and crippled to walk around much. I'd have to, if it was very far away, I'd have to have somebody push me. So, but I want you guys to know that just all your job is to make sure these kids get the best education possible. And the kids that disrupt classes are not okay. They have to suffer a consequence. It's no different than when you have a child at home. If you're bad, your parents usually see to it or should see to it. If not, they make the police do it. It's your job to take care of that and back the teachers in this in every way. And so far, we have not been doing that. We have not backed the teachers. We say we do, but we don't. If you back the teachers, you give them the ability to get rid of the people that cause trouble. And if they cause too much trouble and keep disrupting, they need to leave. It's very simple. If you're going to educate people, you have to take care of them, and you have to make it possible that you do not dumb down the school. It's the worst thing you can possibly do as a group. I lived in a little town, so I'm not a big town outfit, but I've served on every board there ever was. So I've run through all of this stuff. And I just know that in today's day and age, with things as hard as they are right now, with everybody into this hate thing, that doesn't work. You can't bring politics to this job. You have to just do the job. You have to take care of the children. That's your sole job here, nothing else. That's enough of me running my mouth, so I wish you well. Stand up and put your hand on your heart.
Thank you, David. Finally, we'll hear from Ryan Whitteman.
Melissa and Katie, can you check our microphones, please?
Hi, I'm Ryan Whitteman. I live in the Fargo South, Lewis and Clark area of Fargo. I guess I'm going to kind of piggyback off the previous speaker and just kind of say that, in my opinion, the board has lost sight of its true purpose. It's not really a political entity. You were given your roles with political power, but you do not have political power. Your role is one, in my opinion, of service to the faculty, staff, and students of the school. So obviously the schools are struggling. We're aware of that. Students are struggling. Parents are struggling. Staff are obviously struggling. There's issues with literacy and mathematics and all sorts of other academic disciplines. So I would suggest briefly to drop the political zealotry and focus on the schools and kind of get down to brass tacks and deal with issues of the school bricks and mortar. So as Barack Obama and Joe Biden have repeatedly said, maybe not repeatedly, but they have at times said throughout their 10 years in office, the nations that out-educate us will out-compete us, ultimately. So if you care about this community, that also will affect the regional, municipal level, as well as the state and national and international scene as well. So if you care about the area, you care about the people here, presumably all of you do have at least somebody that you care about in the school or connected to the school. It is my recommendation that you focus on that and improving those outcomes, and kind of the old adage of a rising tide carries all boats, including yours and the people you voted for. So if you are politically conscious of the people that elected you, helping the students and the staff and the faculty will, in fact, better your electorate as well. So that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to all the speakers this evening. That brings us to our staff reports. First this evening is Grant Revenues and Opportunities Report. This comes to us in memo number 19, and I would look to Jackie Gap or Megan Even.
Sure, I can introduce Megan while she's getting herself set up. For those of you who don't know, Megan is our grant writer and has put together this report for you to just highlight some of the work that has been done around grants over the past fiscal year.
Thank you. So I'm Megan Even, the grant writer. As Jackie said, I've pulled up the table of contents to just give an overview of what I'm going to talk about with you this evening. To start, I'll talk just a little bit about what my job is. So I'm the grant writer. I write grants. What that means, though, is I work with people from all across the district. It's special education, adult education, building principals, helping their students become choice ready. So it's a very collaborative job, which I appreciate a lot, being able to learn from people who have been in education many years, have been doing this a long time. I'm gonna go over the categories I have here just to describe the differences between them. This is under that, the fourth heading there. So the first one we have is the entitlement grants. So these grants are from government entities, state or federal, and we receive these based on a formula. So it'll be something like number of students in poverty times $30, something like this. That's how they define the entitlement grants. After that, I'll go over competitive grants. So that's what it sounds like there. Grants that are reviewed competitively. A lot of those are also government grants, state or federal. And that's because we, as a district, have our foundation, the Fargo Public School Foundation. They have the 501c3 status. So they apply for a lot more of the private grants, although there's a couple of those in there as well. After that, we'll go over competitive collaborative grants. Those grants are ones that we might not receive the funds for directly, but they still benefit Fargo Public Schools students in some way. Or sometimes we also get like a sub-award that's a smaller part of a larger project. So like we have some projects with NDSU, for example. After that, we'll go over COVID-19 related grants, then rejected grants. I want to explain a little bit why I include that piece. One is because it's normal to be rejected for grants when you're writing grants, so I want that to feel normal. A second one is because I can show with that next category, with anticipated grant awards, how we have learned from some of our rejected grants. And although they were not accepted for this past school year, 2021 to 2022, some of those grants we went back, we revised, and we will be receiving for this upcoming school year. So you'll be able to see some of those repeated on those pages. And another reason really for those rejected grants is if there's something that I've applied for rejected, sometimes I don't really know why I'm rejected. I may not receive feedback. If anybody on the board has any insight, I would be open to hearing that as well, if you're familiar with a company or something like that. All right, so to jump in, we're gonna go to page 2. So these are the entitlement grants. As you can see on the left-hand column in the table, most of these entitlement grants come from Department of Public Instruction. That's a really important state entity that helps us with grants. A lot of the title grants, and then also the Office of Indian Education, so that comes directly from the feds, and North Dakota Career and Technical Education. I'm not gonna go through every single grant we have there, but if you have a question about one of them, you're not sure what it is, below each table, there's a brief description, so you could go over the details there. I'll just highlight a couple of them. Title IV is one grant that I like quite a lot because it is broad enough where it can be really responsive to needs in our buildings. And so the funds for Title IV can be broken into keeping students safe and healthy, making sure students have a well-rounded education, or effective use of technology. So this is really great funds that meets a lot of the needs that we have in the buildings. All right, now I'm gonna jump to the next section. So on page 4, we have a summary of competitive grants. So again, here I've put the funders in that left-hand column. You'll notice again that a lot of these are government grants with a few private foundations sprinkled in there. I'll highlight just a couple. One that I was excited about is the North Dakota Division of Juvenile Services. So we were awarded that grant in 2021, but we implemented this past school year to bring the BAR program to Fargo South High School. BAR is the Building Assets Reducing Risks. When we apply for some federal grants, we have to look at level of evidence to make sure we're implementing evidence-based programs. BAR was super easy to write about because it has tier 1 level of evidence, and how that's defined in the laws, like you need certain number of students included in the study and so on. So that one was great to write about because there's so much evidence for it. And we also kind of get bragging rights now because Fargo South was the first high school in the state of North Dakota to implement this program. And you'll notice too that DPI grant, we have one specifically called BAR now that was just awarded this year, will be implemented the next year. So that's something the state started just this next school year. It's new funds that are available. So I'm excited about that. BAR is a 3-year program too, and it's very, very data driven, both in terms of the program itself, how it's implemented, looking at student data, and also how we first got it funded through the Justice Department. The reports we had to write for that was a lot of data. So I'm excited to kind of see where that goes too. All right. Another one I want to highlight here is United Way, Prepare Children to Succeed. So they've helped us with our Even Start program. That's another program I quite like. It's based out of the Agassiz building, and it's 2-gen approach where parents come and they can get education that they might need, and they bring, if they have children, their children can receive services at the same time. So it's a 2-gen approach to learning. And there's always waiting lists for this program, which shows a really big need in our community. I know a lot of refugees families benefit from this program, as do, if we have any high school students who may have children before they graduate, they also benefit from this program. Now I'm going to skip to the competitive collaborative grants, which is on page 8. So these are, again, the grants that we don't write directly necessarily, but we're partners with some entity in our community. An example of that is that last one. So the funding comes from the U.S. Department of Education, but it comes to us through SEEK, the Southeast Education Cooperative. So they wrote us into their grant. It's a 5-year grant. We're on year 4 of that. One that I want to point out that just didn't quite fit into my categories is that top one, City of Fargo. So it's kind of more like a donation, but I wanted to include it here just because it speaks to our relationship with the city, so that if I do apply for funds, I like to be aware of, other things that they may have given us before as well. And we also have here too, so RD Offutt Company, that one was kind of neat because it was their employees can write grants. And so I think that also speaks to the good work we do in the community. An employee who works there decided to write this on behalf of the district and secured those funds on our behalf. Then the next page, this is the summary of the COVID-19 related grants. So most of these are entitlement funds. That second one was competitive. So like the first one, school safety testing, making sure we have testing so students could continue coming to school if they're testing negative for COVID. Connectivity fund, like giving students internet when we were online in the beginning days of the COVID, so they could still participate in education. When we talk about COVID funds, we often bring up ESSER. So that's where you'll see those 3 acronyms at the bottom. There's actually 3 different pools of money for that, but that's what we mean when we bring up ESSER. It's these specific COVID-19 related grants. And we have Tony Hughesby works with these COVID grants, particularly because there's a lot of reporting, making sure that we're using the funds responsibly and everything. So I am very grateful that we have Tony because it's a lot to do. Then page 11 is summary of rejected grants. One of the codes I have not been able to crack yet is Midco. So that's one, if anybody has insight, I would take your insight. They're smaller grants, but I think that they could still be worth it if I can kind of figure out what they're looking for there. A couple of these other ones, we did not receive this last school year, but we will be receiving this next school year. So an example of that would be the Best in Class grant from Department of Human Services, which is going to be like a preschool program, which is very, very needed in, I think, all communities across the country. So we're happy to be able to offer that. Another one that we're going to be getting that we were rejected for is this out of school time one, and that's going to be a collaborative one with NDSU there as well. And then the Novo Foundation one too, that one is, we didn't receive this grant, the SEL in Action, but there's a different program name if you go back up to the competitive grants, right? So we got a different one. We actually got the higher amount one, so not so bad. Then this next table on page 12 is the anticipated grant awards. So these are ones that we may have had grant activity this past school year, 2021 to 2022, but we don't really reap the benefits of these programs yet until this upcoming school year. So I wanted to include them to show that this is stuff we've been working on, but it didn't really fit into those other tables. So I created this new category to show that. So some of them, like, we don't have contracts, we might not have contracts in place, but we've been told kind of informally we can expect to receive this grant, or some of them just don't start till later. A couple I want to highlight here that we're excited about is, you'll see United Way, we're getting 2 grants from them. One of them is going to be for a full-service community school at one of our middle schools, which is a program to try to meet all of the needs of our students and families, because we know if students are hungry, they can't learn, things like that. They're also going to be funding the Even Start program, so they're sustaining the level that they had the previous 3 years, but they've added $25,000 to that. And the Department of Human Services is also funding Even Start. They're funding for the first time, and that's going to be really great because then we can add a classroom to Even Start, an additional classroom, which I know that this program always has a waiting list, so really good that we can meet more of that need that we have there. This next is a graph showing revenue source. So you can see most of these grants are federal, with a lot of them DPI as the pass-through. And then the final page, this shows how we utilize grant funds. So it's mostly used for salary and benefits. And I can say too, as the grant writer, that that is where I think the need usually is we need a person to do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes that can be challenging with a few of these grants if there's more of a question mark if the funding will be offered next year. That can make it harder to put some of those funds towards salary. But there are some grants that are more stable, like they've been, for 15 years. We can be pretty confident that those ones are going to continue. And then at the bottom, you can see a 5-year historic fund for grant revenues. This is obviously very affected by COVID funds because those are all in there. So when it starts to go down, don't panic. That'll be normal, right? So any questions? Yes.
Yes, Nikki.
Thank you so much. I can appreciate the amount of work that grant writing is and the challenges it presents. I'd like to record your last statement because in a couple of years when that granting, the funding starts going down, I'm gonna say, remember she said,
Yep.
Don't panic. I wanted to comment too, I'm excited about the United Way one for the full service community schools because I am on that task force at the state level and we have a full service community school test site already here in Fargo. So I'm really pumped about that. I'm glad to see more of that coming because we can serve our students and our families better that way. But overall, I just want to say, wow, keep going, lady. This is impressive and nicely done. Thank you for all your work because I know it's not easy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Megan. I am personally very proud of our work at South High with the BAR program and the way that was recognized throughout the state. I think that's really a standout for us. I too am excited about the United Way and the Prepare Children to Succeed program. I think that's a really innovative thing that we're doing. And just as someone who also attempts to write public health and immunization grants at NDSU, I appreciate your humility and transparency around the rejected category because that's just the reality. So any other board members have, yes, Katie?
Following up on President Newman's comment, do we anticipate BAR being able to expand to other schools? And I don't know if that's a question for you or Jackie or Dr. Gandhi.
It's something I know that we've discussed, but there was some I think kind of wanting to get some other pieces in place at the other high schools, but it's conversations we've had, but I would pass off to Jackie or Bob if you have more to add to that.
Let Bob go.
So we've had conversations at the other comprehensive high schools, but also at our middle schools, because we think this would be a wonderful program to have a continuation, if that is Carl Ben Eielson in South High School or Discovery in Davies. So we are having those conversations and will continue to do so this year during our principals meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have comments, questions for Megan?
I do.
Yes, Naima.
It's not a question, but I think that would be Dr. Gandhi and other that are upper levels. I'm first and foremost, this is so courageous of you to really stand up there and to talk about the grants and everything. And I really appreciate you because it's not easy to write grant. Believe me, I did try to write grant for my nonprofit. It doesn't work very well. So sometimes I sleep on it. So, so I really kudos to you. I see that because the reason why I'm going to ask you this question is because I'm not seeing it in here. There are a lot of parents and a lot of our community really struggling with after school program, and I'm not seeing anything in here. Maybe correct me if I'm not seeing any grant in here about the after school program because it's so crucial, and it came to my attention that every time that I talk to a refugees family, or not refugees family only, but also our community member at large, sometimes they can't even afford the fact that, you know, the Y or the what is it, the Boy and Youth Club, they can't afford it because sometimes even with the sliding scale is too high for them. And I remember, you know, I really I went to one of my schools that I was assigned in for the Legion, is that is I find out that many of the parents too are struggling, you know, just to afford that after school program. And really is our focus as we see from our mission is that is academic achievement is so crucial to us, and that I'm just really curious, you know. Sorry if it's too long.
No, I
Because I just really wanted to know.
I can speak to that a little bit
Thank
too.
you.
So there are a couple grants on page 12, the anticipated, they're going to be for after school programs. One of them, so the 21st Century Community Learning Grant, which is the collaborative grant through SEEK, that's going to be a subaward directly to the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club to host after school programs. I don't know which schools it's at though. I could get that information for you, but I don't know that off the top of my head. And then also this out of school time grant, that's going to be after school program with, I think it's like tutoring, NDSU students would come tutor at, and that's I think one middle school. And that's something we attempted to do. What we wanted to do with that program was to do after school for all of our elementary schools, targeting specifically the students who struggle the most. One of the challenges with that, and this happens, I can think of another program where something similar happened. When we try to write grants that target the students who struggle the most, sometimes it comes down to numbers. Like the funder says, well, you're only going to help 30 students this way, right? Whereas if we fund more students at tier 1 who need less intensive interventions, they can impact a greater number of students. So I know that's something that is challenging with grants, is because we want to obviously provide supports for our most in-need students, but then there's this balance of we also need to have higher numbers in order to get the funders interested sometimes as well.
Yes, Missy.
I was just going to add that if a building participates in the 21st Century Grant, which we've had in the past, Boys and Girls Club and the Y, when they accept those dollars, cannot deny people service for no payment. And so the 21st Century Grant has been used. I think one of the issues we're seeing, though, is they do not have enough openings for all the kids who would like to have that service. So the YMCA has canceled morning at all of their sites because of staffing. And I know, talking to the Boys and Girls Club, they have wait lists at many of our buildings. And so if they have more staffing, they can do more. We will certainly work with our both organizations, as if it's space, to look at where can we have more space. But it's been very challenging.
Well, thank you so much. Can you guys be able to look outside other organizations that are within our community? Because I do understand, I used to work for like 24 different organizations that I was a health coordinator for them. They do offer after school program and they are willing to take students. Can you be able to work with that? If I give you the name of them later on. It doesn't have to be right now.
I think that is something we're always willing to discuss and try to find a way to make sure people have the information they need. I think one of the pieces that we just have to be careful with is usually it is transportation too that we find families really struggle with, and we cannot transport, let's say, from Washington to South Fargo. Do you know what I mean? So we do not have that. So it's tricky, but we are certainly willing if there is names even to get out to PTAs.
Well, I think I can get you covered on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, thank you very much for being here, Megan.
Thank you.
And that brings us next to an enrollment update brought to us by Dr. Gross and Missy Eidness.
Thank you. We are just waiting for the technology. Let's see if it will connect for me. Do we need to bring back the Crestone screen? Sorry for the delay. I think we're up and running. So what Missy and I would like to do tonight is just share with you some comparative data between where we are today with enrollment numbers. Compare that to about this time last school year, so on the 25th of August in 2021. So on the screen right now is that comparison. So you see 4 columns. The first column in A is our buildings. B is the data from 2001. And then C is as of 4:34 p.m. And please notice I did put a time on there because it is changing almost minute by minute. And then finally over in column D, that is just a comparison between where we're at. I did want to, before we talk about the data, just show where the information in column B can be found, and that is on our public website. So all of that information in our enrollment data is on our public website. If anyone wants to see it, they can go to the About Us tab. Once they are there, over on the left-hand side, there is a link to enrollment data. From there, there are multiple pieces of information that any community member can have access to. I'm going to look at the enrollment summary data. You can scroll down and pick a particular year in time. So I'm going to pick last year, 21, 22. And then finally, you will see all of the different reports that are available. And the one I want to look at is August, just so that we have a comparison. So the data that Missy and I are going to be talking about in comparison between this year and last is all available right here. So that is in column B. So as we look at building by building, we just wanted to show you the trends that we have across our system. So you can see when we look at our high school level data, we are up about 133 students in all of our buildings. That would include our 3 comprehensive high schools, Dakota High School, and then you'll notice that I have combined our high school virtual academy and our high school students who are in residential services. The reason for that is the cell size or the number of students in either one of those would have been too small, and we may have been able to identify students, and we certainly did not want to do that. That's why that has been combined. The same is true when we look at middle school and elementary. So as you look across each of our buildings, you can see North High School is up 38 students, South High School up 98, Davies pretty close, down just 3 students, Dakota High School up 9, and then that combination down 9, and that gets us to that increase of 133 students. Please know, if we would look at the data tomorrow, it might be up 1 or 2 because it is somewhat fluid. If you look at the middle school, as we combine all of those together, we are down about 65 students. Some of that is due to size leaving the middle school, going to the high school, maybe a smaller class following behind them from the elementary to the middle. Or it could be that families have employment choices that they've made and they have left our community. So it's a combination of all of those things as we look at that. But as the data is compared from one year to the next, Ben Franklin up 39, Carl Ben at this time down 29 students, Discovery down 71. That piece, that is due to the changes in their boundaries. And that was done purposefully because we wanted to create more space for the families who are moving into that community. So I think this data shows that that boundary change is having a positive impact. And then you can see as we combine those other three categories together, a slight change there, and that gets us to just down about 65 students at our middle schools. And then I'll turn it over to Missy.
So at the elementary, and we'll take a look at we have 14 elementaries. So Bennett we had a boundary change that happened last December. And that last year we grew by about 70 students at Bennett. And we knew that we couldn't take that enrollment increase at the building. So we did shift a section to Centennial because of the patterns we were seeing, and that did help us. So if we take a look at those numbers, so Centennial's almost back to what they were last year. Most buildings, the buildings that as we look at our anticipation, are very close. But one of the interesting things is that we are seeing some growth at Longfellow, McKinley, Washington, in the north too. So maybe the changing over of homes, families, and things that went forward. From last fall to today, we're 9 less students than we had last year at this time. I will say we really watch kindergarten at this point because last year between now and Labor Day, about 15 kindergarten students. So that is something that we always watch with kindergarten. So we'll kind of see maybe at the next board meeting where we actually end up with students in school.
And then the last piece of data that's on this comparison is just total number. And you can see from a year ago to this afternoon, we are up about 59 students, K through 12, in the Fargo Public Schools.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. Any board members have questions or comments? Greg.
How did these numbers, I guess, line up with what expectations were coming into the school year, particularly maybe Jackie can weigh in how these may impact the expected revenue we projected?
So our state funding is a year behind. So we actually, for this coming school year, paid on our enrollment from the prior year with that. So we really don't recognize the full effect of the additional students until the following year. And they're gradually bringing in that on-time funding. So we will get a portion of it in the next year. So every additional student will generate, and I should know this off the top of my head, but are we at 60%? Dr. Gandhi, do you remember?
I was going to say 80, so maybe we say 70 and we'll get back to you for sure.
So yeah, so it definitely does help, and that we're moving toward that on-time piece where we do get recognition right away for students will be very beneficial as we go forward.
Yes, Dr. Gandhi.
And just for some context around what Jackie's saying, extremely grateful for North Dakota legislators in 2 legislative sessions ago that really began the conversation around on-time funding and transitioning school districts or making that option available. There are some other things in terms of other school districts as well that have impacts, which is why it's a gradual increase. But what on-time funding will allow us to do when it's fully implemented for school districts is allow school districts to receive their revenue from state funding based on either the spring of the prior year's enrollment or the fall of the current year's enrollment. And that we do think for our district and our demographic will be extremely helpful. And just to also answer Greg's initial question, while we have some grade levels changes based on just some class sizes are bigger than the other, on average, the demographer that we use as a district, and they normally do their work every December, we'll get an enrollment analysis. We are expected to grow about a anywhere from 50 to 100 students a year. So we're in that range. And then there's always a little caveat that says the diversion can change everything. Once, because the diversion's completed, those numbers can rapidly increase.
Yes, Seth.
I just have a quick question for Missy. What do our kindergarten numbers look like versus last year?
So versus last year we ended up after Labor Day around 912 kindergartners.
Okay.
And then this year we're at, I think, 839. But anticipated, I think, the demographers thought we were going to have 960. So I do think we're going to have a few more kindergartners register in that range.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Gandhi.
And one more just piece of information that we probably haven't planned for because it was more out of an opportunity that we'll just kind of have to adjust because we just don't know the realized effect at this point in time, will be specific to kindergarten and maybe elementary schools, but also just some changes around our campuses near downtown Fargo as well. There have been several employers in town that are utilizing more international options, Sanford being one of the largest employers in town in doing that. And I know that with some of the nurses that they're going to be bringing in internationally, they are going to be working towards providing housing for a couple months and then until there's secure housing available as well. And that's going to change some of the demographics because there might be individuals transitioning, increasing our 30% on average mobility rate as a district. So there's going to be some pieces of that that we'll see, and potentially some more families are coming in because they're going through that process as well.
Good to know. Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Yes, Nikki.
This one's for Bob. Bob, I'm curious to know, I know we have an organization that we work with that kind of gives us projections on enrollments, and are we pretty much kind of holding true to where they anticipated we might be? Are we above, below, on track?
So Rob Schwartz and Associates, or RSP, does the projections for the district and many other across the state. And they are predicting, I believe it was about 79 students approximately that we would be increasing this school year. As you see, we are up that 50 some, plus Missy indicated that we probably will have more kindergarten students enroll as well. So I'm going to guess that that projection is going to be very close.
Any other discussion this evening? Okay, thank you both very much. We'll move on to the first reading of our operational plan. This comes to us in memo number 15 with Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you, board members. On an annual basis, administration has the opportunity to share with you our operational plan, which really is the scope of work that we have for our district moving forward. We utilize this process, though it's the administration scope of work, through a 2-reading process at board meetings. So that provides board members the opportunity to give feedback or redirect administration if there are other priorities, focuses that they see that are more aligned to the work or that need to be captured in the operational plan. That really is ultimately going to be what our guiding document is as a district. Page 4 of your operational plan speaks to some of the conversations that we've had earlier this year, which is really focusing on aligning our long-term strategic plan vision. And I apologize, I meant page 2. It's really that summary document in the chart on the bottom of how we use our strategic plan, then how do we create long-range plans, and then we create an operational plan. And all of that really is to be aligned so we can make sure that our resources, time, and energy are focused on what we want to do. And then ultimately, as we talk about the strategic plan next, those should be aligned to the results that the board wants to monitor as well. And that's been something that we've been really instrumental, or really spent a lot of time in the development of these documents today, which is why they're coming back to back to make sure that they are capturing a format that allows a district to move in one direction in unison versus trying to meet multiple different markers of success.
Great, thank you very much. Any discussion? Yes, Greg.
Would you maybe briefly point out if maybe 2 or 3 items that you think are the largest change from the previous year's operational plan?
Yeah, I will ask our teaching and learning team because they are heavy in this plan, but part of that reason is also because they are encompassing and we've been doing a lot of work internally in just terms of making sure that we don't work as much in silos and that everything is kind of connected to our ultimate outcome. So I'll look at Bob and Missy first if there's some things that they want to highlight and then chime in after that.
Yes, Bob.
Thank you. I guess I could point out two that I think will impact the teaching and learning department, and I'm sure Missy will have others. One that is on page 8, as you are close to that area, you'll see many of them are talking about an instructional playbook. And this is something that the teaching and learning department has worked on. Dr. Leanne Hansen and the team have done a phenomenal job of really defining what best practice is in the classroom. And that is how we're then going to share that with all of our staff. Today, in part of our professional development, we're rolling out that playbook to all staff. Another one that you'll see is right underneath that. It's the creation and the implementation of a special education playbook. So how can we also then define in the areas of special education, what are some of those key strategies, key indicators, and also some of the things that we want to highlight and strengthen across our system. I think part of that will be in conjunction or connection to the audit that we did in the past few years from the University of Minnesota and the feedback that they gave to us. So I think those would be two that I'd like to highlight. And then just a little bit above that, you'll see one more that says recruit for and conduct a middle level task force to review middle level advisory and intervention time. As we talk about middle school, we know we have our advisory, which is based upon the middle school philosophy, really to build relationships with students. How can we better utilize that or even utilize it in a more effective way to potentially continue to build those relationships, but then also add to it some of the interventions that some of our students might need? And that would be a task force of middle level teachers to bring them to the table, to have conversations about, let's research this together, let's see if there's some changes that we could do. So I would think those would be 2 or 3 of the ones that I would highlight from teaching and learning.
I would just add to that we are working with all of our teachers the next year and a half on the science of reading training. And so majority of our elementary teachers will go through a 20-hour training around the science of reading. And then what we'd call our support staff at the elementary instructional staff will go a 2-hour training. So if you teach Phi-Ed or music around the science of reading as we go forward, which is a large initiative. The other one I would draw your attention to is just the University of Minnesota, as Bob said. And we went into the University of Minnesota doing an audit around our special education. And when we came to it, we realized with their help, we had to look at it more globally. So that's why we have the playbooks. It's around what are those strategies that are research-based that we want to see in our classrooms, and how do we support teachers to do those. So that shows up in our plan, along with making sure when we do have an intervention, we're matching it to the need of the student. And so really have taken a deep dive in making lists so we have them of where these interventions fit with different pieces. Mental health was the other one that we really have to look at. And I think some of the articles we've read about what we've learned from COVID is that your social emotional and your academic learning have to be braided. And we have to look at those together. So we have a large piece in our plan that deals with making sure trauma-informed instruction and supports for students and staff.
Dr. Gandhi?
The only other thing that I'll highlight that will be more unique to the operational aspect would be under the resource capacity domain in Standard 3, and it is where I think the 3rd or 4th action down, which really talks about creating a system of employee groups for all employee groups to be represented and updating their employment agreements on an annual basis. This is something that we'll be sharing at a future employee town hall. I could be wrong. I think it's scheduled for November or December of this fall. But really, we've never had, or historically, we've used certified and classified support staff for our employee groups and administrators. And upon recognition, as we've realized that we do need to dive a little bit deeper, and there really are 4 employee groups within our organization, whether they're certified employees that are represented through the agreements that the board negotiates, but then also for other employee groups, we have professional support staff, and administrators. And sometimes using the broad categories haven't really been applicable to everyone's situation because there are some things that are dictated in North Dakota Century Code for school administrators that may not apply to other administrators that don't identify as a school leadership administrator. And what we're going to be able to do is by making sure that every voice has an opportunity on an annual basis to update their terms and agreement is really create more flexibility and voice for our employees. First and foremost, we'll make sure that every title has the opportunity to be represented, but then secondly, maybe even take advantage of what we've learned during COVID, whether they're looking at the ability to complete certain tasks, looking at evaluating what really matters versus maybe some of those historic innate notions of how we measure both work and time for an employee and try to create more flexibility to remain competitive in a market that's changing.
Okay, yes, Melissa.
Yeah, could one of you elaborate on what tiered instruction is and if that's different than what we're currently doing or how much of a shift it is?
So tiered instruction is just how we look at when you're going to teach a whole classroom, everybody at once. That's called tier 1. And then tier 2 would be if we identify there's a gap or need in students, we'll pull them in a smaller group to, I always call it an extra scoop. So they're going to be in the class with their students, but they're going to get some extra support on whatever we've identified. Tier 3 is that you increase the frequency of that small group help or you increase the duration. And so someone at tier 3, then we are going to give them more days a week of the intervention to see if we can make progress. And then we, in tier 2 and 3, we progress monitor so that we want them to go back to the classroom when we get to that proficiency point.
Okay, thank you all. Good discussion. The board does not need to take any action on this tonight. This is just coming to us to review as a first reading. Normally, the operational plan from the cabinet traditionally is on the operational side of the organization. So it's being shared with us to provide opportunity for us to advise or redirect if we see necessary. So with that, any other comments or clarifications? All right, thank you. We will move on to the first reading of our strategic plan. That's memo number 16, also by Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. Same concept as the operational plan in order to provide board members multiple readings to give feedback or redirection if needed. And that again can be done here at the board dais if it needs to be done through just contacting me or something afterwards. If there's individual board members that have questions, that could be done as well, or just specific things that they'd like us to know. I don't want to belabor the point because I do believe that we spent a significant portion of our summer work session talking about the strategic plan and its development as well. The strategic plan was the focus of the speech and the remarks that I made today at our staff opener and how we wanted to utilize the plan, not just for a long-term vision in Fargo Public Schools, but also to be able to hone in on in my opinion, we need to reinvigorate and re-elevate the professionalism in education for our staff and understand where they have autonomy and what the measure of success is going to be. And the biggest component of our strategic plan is to understand that data can be used in a wide variety of ways, and there's formative information that we could use as a practitioner that will still be transparent and part of who we are and something that we share publicly. But there's difference between information that we use for our own learning and growth versus information that we use for evaluations. And we worked with all of our board members after working with our community through our State of the Schools last year to gather information about what are those big pillar things, whether they're experiences or markers of achievement that we want to establish within our school district, knowing that there's sometimes some things come at the cost of something else. So the ultimate measure for our organization is going to be results. We have different standards of education that we want to uphold. Those are just certain experiences or expectations that we want to provide for our students. And then we have several pieces of formative information under each category, and those are data points that we use for our growth and development on a daily basis. So that's really going to be a new framework that we put in. ultimately, as an organization, our goal is to be a learning organization, which research will tell you is really an organization that drives to be better every single day and grow every single day. And that's our biggest measure of success. It's not any one data point in one point in time. That's a reflection of one student, because there are so many different dynamics to what we do. So that is, I know, a lot of information, a lot of what we discussed with our work session as well, but the same concept as the operational plan for the strategic plan.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, excellent. We'll move on to our FEA report. Kim Rieger had indicated she will not be here tonight. I don't think I see anyone else here to represent FEA, so we'll move, oh yes, Dr. Gandhi.
Just wanted to acknowledge that I think FEA's absence is because back to school nights and everything else going on. So just want to recognize that they're there serving our
Excellent.
community and our students.
That will take us actually to the superintendent report. Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. Outside of the enrollment information that's really shared, I don't have any other major news. We just are beyond excited for the start of the school year. Our staff have returned into our buildings. There's no energy like the back to school energy. So we look forward to kicking off a great school year for this Thursday for our students and staff.
Excellent. With that, I will look for approval of the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda along with the HR addendum.
Thank you, Seth.
Second.
Seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. That brings us to our business section, and we remarkably have no items under the business section. So we'll move on to committee liaison and board reports. I was going to start by reading correspondence I received from Robin, who could not be here. She is at Ed Clapp's Back to School Night representing the Boys and Girls Club, and there is a full house of parents and eager students. So I will provide my updates at the next meeting. So that is why she is not here. And I will move on to you, Seth.
I actually have nothing to report this evening, President Newman.
Great. Naima?
Well, I have attended Board of Health last Fridays. It went great. I was learning about the operation, and you actually did present, and you did amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, I just have 2 updates from my school liaisons. I met with Principal Franklin at Carl Ben Nielsen about 2 weeks ago and had a great conversation with him. And then met with Jennifer Schulteis and the assistant principal at Ed Clapp and got to tour that building. I'd never been in it before, so that was really neat. So I'm just looking forward to working with all of my schools this year, and that's all I have for right now.
Excellent. I think you've done all of your liaison visits
Hit 'em
before
all,
the
yeah.
first day. Jeez, gold star. Okay, Nikki.
I do have a little bit longer report. It's been a wild couple of weeks. So wanted to start out right after our last meeting. We had the employee picnic, which was wonderful. And all of us, I think, were there. And it was a great time to be able to visit and connect with people and have some great conversations. Last Wednesday, I attended the FPS Foundation meeting. This is going into my 3rd year of serving them as a board liaison, so I'm excited about that. CEA is coming up soon, governance tomorrow. Yesterday, I attended the teacher shortage task force that I am a part of, and that is through NDSU and I believe DPI. Last night and tonight, I attended back to school nights, both at Discovery and then tonight at Davies. And another great opportunity to see the classrooms, be in the buildings, visit with the teachers. Davies was particularly interesting because they are my liaison school this year, and Troy Cody graciously invited me to attend their back to school breakfast Monday morning at 7:30 yesterday. So I got to introduce myself, let them know, reach out to us. Here's to a great year. It was really a fantastic meeting because I don't want anybody to feel that school board member can't talk to them. you know. So it was particularly fun to go through the building tonight because then they recognized me from that. So a lot of great connections there. Sergeant Jacobson graciously invited me to, and I left my phone at home, which is nice, but my information's on it. And I want to say it, the name of the task force is it the Community Outreach? Which one? Culture Advisory Committee, that's what it is. And I was really excited to attend that. And I'm all as a board member. And basically what that means is visiting with some of the elders of our newer American communities. And I believe there was a representative there from the Haitian community and the Liberian community. So got to visit with them a little bit about PTA and a little bit about board work. Missy was there. We had one of our principals there. I can see her face and I'm drawing a blank on her name. Ed Clapp.
Jennifer Schuldeis.
Jennifer Schuldeis. Okay. So that was a wonderful opportunity and I hope to do more with that. So thank you for that invitation and I love that you are serving on the board. It was a pleasure to see you there as well. Let's see. Last thing, I visited real briefly with Tanya Wrigley-Lingle. She is the principal at Eagles, and they too are a liaison school. And so we are going to get together shortly after school starts so I can meet with them. And I have yet to reach out to Bennett.
Excellent. Thank you. Greg.
I visited Dakota High School after getting lost in that maze of a building. I actually attended one of their prospective student orientation sessions to get, I guess, kind of the full experience about what they try to offer to their students, and I thought it was great. I thought that is a wonderful option that I hope a lot of our students who otherwise wouldn't attend high school would take advantage of, and it was very good to learn about. And then I got a tour afterwards of the maze from the principal and the vice principal.
Great, thank you. Katie?
Sure. So since our last meeting with my colleagues here, I attended the picnic for the summer staff at South High. And after that, I headed over to Lewis and Clark, where I was able to meet with my third liaison school with the principal and assistant principal there. Got a tour and got to learn about their students and staff. I also attended my first planning committee meeting this week. And then unfortunately, I missed my first meeting with the Cass County Career and Tech Education Consortium because I was out of state for a family event. But I look forward to meeting with them soon.
Thank you all. Everyone's been busy. I will briefly give a president's report. I too attended the FPS staff picnic at South High. I really enjoyed that event every year. I feel like we did a great job on our prizes, our door prizes this year. So good job, everyone. And then I attended the NDSBA Lunch and Learn called Nuts and Bolts of Board Referendums. I want to say I learned a little, but it was just very involved. I did my best. And then later that day, I too, like your story, Greg, I did my liaison visit at Clara Barton Hawthorne and met with Principal Folden. I had a 50-50 shot. Apparently the principal and most of the staff have double offices. So I initially drove to Clara Barton and of course they were all at Hawthorne. So I showed up late to my liaison visit. I should have clarified that, but that was really great. Learned a lot. I had never been in that school. What a cool thing that they're doing with the divided campuses and the way they pull that off. I've also reached out to arrange my visit with Centennial, my other liaison school. Yesterday we had planning meeting yesterday morning, and then I had all the intentions of attending the FPS all staff opening event at South High today and was unable to make that. No offense, Dr. Gandhi, I was looking forward to your comments, but my son Liam performs with the Vivace Choir, so I was mostly excited to see their performance, but life anyway. And then our family has attended 3 back-to-school nights this week. My husband is currently at Centennial with our son. My daughter attended Discovery last night, and then my Davies high schooler drove himself to back-to-school night. So that's a fun new chapter. And we are all looking forward to the first day of school. And governance meets tomorrow, bright and early. So thank you all. With that, I'll affirm our next regular meeting date of September 13th, and it is 6:44. We are adjourned.